This is CBC Here and Now.
The City of St. John says its staff have noticed snowmobile and ATV tracks here on the city's water supply at Windsor Lake, and that's a big problem. I'm Jeremy Eaton, I'll have that story coming up on Here and Now.
We've got some heavy rain and some heavy snow on the way as we head towards the weekend, and then things are going to start to warm up.
On this chilly day in Stephenville, it's hard to imagine a holiday this summer, but people in this area are already booking flights to Toronto with a returning Sunwing flight.
All of the airports have gone through a devastating period during the last year.
What it means for the future of this airport.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Peter Cowan. We'll get to those stories shortly, but first, 3 young men are facing charges in connection with a homicide.
It happened in the Goulds last year. Police were called to the St. John's neighborhood on April 2nd after a report of a stabbing. That's where they found 20-year-old Brandon Leftault near a home on Sunset Street. Leftault was taken to hospital and died a short time later. Well, today, one 19-year-old and 2 18-year-olds are each charged with manslaughter and robbery. One of the 18-year-olds is also facing a charge of public mischief. The 3 accused were arrested yesterday and have been released from custody while they await their court appearance. Investigators do not believe there is a risk to public safety. Well, the community of Sheshatshiu, meanwhile, is mourning another life taken in a crash. Last night, the community held a vigil to remember Matthew Malik. The 29-year-old was killed in a hit-and-run early Saturday morning. Someone driving an all-terrain vehicle hit him with the ATV while he was out walking. The RCMP is still looking for the driver, but has found the ATV. Malik's family says some people in Sheshatshiu want to see a stronger police presence at night.
He was a young man that had a future, and his life was tragically taken away. The community is not safe at night for them to walk. Public safety has to improve. It's getting worse. Matthew, he was a human being and he didn't deserve to lose his life.
Well, is it time to bring back the bubble? It's a discussion maritime provinces are having, and the Premier of this province says, don't cut us out either. At today's briefing, Andrew Furey said Newfoundland and Labrador could join the Atlantic bubble, and soon. Furey will be on a virtual call with the other Atlantic premiers this evening to discuss the details. The health minister was also positive about the summer season. Today, John Hagee said provided COVID numbers stay low, this summer will be a marked improvement from last year. The Atlantic bubble allows people in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and this province to travel freely without having to self-isolate.
I'm quite hopeful that, we can get there in the timelines that they're discussing. Our case numbers are going down. Our positivity rates are lower than some of the other provinces within the Atlantic region. So I'm quite hopeful to have a positive outcome in conjunction, of course, with the public health officers having their discussions. So that we can move towards an Atlantic bubble, provided, of course, the science supports it and it's safe to do so.
So does that mean that you believe it's realistic that Newfoundland and Labrador could join the bubble next month?
I do.
Well, sticking with travel, Sunwing is returning to Stephenville, and that has hopeful passengers already booking flights to Toronto. The weekly flight is bringing back a sense of normalcy for an airport that's been shut down for most of the pandemic. Here and Now's Colleen Connors has more from the West Coast.
Sunwing Airlines announced its domestic flight routes last week, and Stephenville is on the list for a weekly flight to Toronto. Starting in June, Sunwing will fly from here, plus 2 weekly flights through Gander, 5 from St. John's. New airport management says the last year has been a devastating period, but this news is good news.
We're very pleased that Sunwing has made us part of their plans to start operations again. So there's an excitement in the air here that people are sort of sensing that there's some sort of normalcy returning again. That being said, we don't know what June is going to bring in regards to the COVID restrictions that are in place and how that will impact those particular flights.
Sunwing canceled its summer flights last year because of the pandemic. With more of the population receiving vaccinations, Short says this summer is looking like it might be different.
From what I understand, the ticket sales are going very well, and everything is a go at this point in time.
But as of right now, this airport sits empty. Besides the restaurant that's still operating, the rest of the airport is closed and the lights are off. But this returning Sunwing flight could be a big boost for this area.
Having Sunwing come back was like great news for the community. We have so many people that have friends, families that live in the Toronto, Central Canada region. And that flight coming home every year was so important.
The town has put money into keeping the airport viable, including hiring the Winnipeg Airport Services Corporation to manage the struggling service. If health guidelines allow the quarantine period to be lifted, Sunwing could bring more flights and more money to the area.
But when people come into our province, the multiplying effect economically, what that means, that dollar gets spent a couple of more times. So it's great for business, and being an airport town, this is a start with Sunwing. We're hoping for further announcements.
The Sunwing flight will be on Wednesdays this summer and will stop in St. John's on its way to Toronto. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Stephenville.
It was deceivingly cold out there today. Plenty of sunshine, but temperatures still sitting below zero for most of the island. -2 in St. John's, -3 for Corner Brook. Deer Lake sitting at about -4 earlier today. And then we've got those temperatures into the minus double digits for coastal areas of Labrador as well. Now, taking a look at this current satellite and radar, we're seeing an area of low pressure well offshore, but ridge of high pressure is somewhat dominating the weather. We do have a few flurries on the go for the west coast and some across the Avalon as well. That will generally be the story as we head through the night tonight. But if we zoom out, lots of mild air. This is our next weather maker that will move in, going to bring some even more milder air, and that is prompting a special weather statement for the majority of the island. It's going to bring some heavy rain to eastern portions and then some snow through central, but I'll break that down for you coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the City of St. John's is warning snowmobilers and ATV users to stay away from the city water supplies. Staff at Windsor Lake noticed tracks near an area where water enters the treatment plant. And as Here Now's Jeremy Eaton reports, it's a major safety concern and not just for snowmobilers.
John's does not to see. Despite multiple signs warning that use of motorized vehicles on or near the watershed is illegal, earlier today a man on an ATV ripped across Windsor Lake.
It hasn't happened a lot. People know that area is protected, and certainly the watershed is protected as well. There was no development at all, so we were surprised to see it.
The biggest concern for the city is that doing
of the pure water of the lake as well, and it is against the law to operate ATVs, snowmobiles on or near any of our water supplies.
The city says staff has only seen evidence of this type of activity on Windsor Lake, but it was near the water intake.
So that's dangerous for the snowmobiler because the water could be moving there and therefore the ice thin.
Along with Windsor Lake, other protected watershed areas include the Broadcoat River, Babel's Big Pond, and Petty Harbor Long Pond. Breaking the rules is something that the city is taking seriously.
That would be a fine from the city, and it's something that we would endeavor to track down, but it would be difficult, of course. But we want people to feel that they understand ownership of their own water supply and protect it as well as protecting themselves.
Despite there being numerous signs telling people that they can't ride ATVs or skidoos on Windsor Lake, it's something that I witnessed, and I was only here for about half an hour. Hickman says he hopes that people who are doing this will stop so that they can preserve the water that's underneath the ice here at Windsor Lake. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Another day with no new cases of COVID in the province. Today's COVID briefing instead focused on looking back at the last outbreak. Dr. Proton Rahman says because it was the new variant, it led to 3 times the number of cases. But he says the quick lockdown prevented the virus from spreading further. From here, though, it's a race.
a race, isn't it? It's a race between injections or vaccinations and infections. And to really help secure the win, what we really need to do is to keep the infections as low as possible so that we can vaccinate many individuals, because by keeping the infections low, we're buying time, and it's time that's going to allow us to vaccinate most of our Newfoundlanders.
Now, Rahman also provided some clarity on modeling going into the election. He said there was no modeling that could have predicted an outbreak during the election. In fact, it wasn't possible to do any modeling of what case numbers might be.
There was no modeling, because what you need for modeling, whether it's short-term forecasting or long-term predictive modeling, are cases to go by, because it's the pattern that we actually use to look forward. And there was no pattern there because we had no cases at the time of our discussion with the Premier.
So then why did the Premier say that he made his decision to call the election based on modeling if there wasn't any? He says he was using data from other provinces and looking at how quickly things could get out of hand if our cases grew like theirs. He insists it was all public data. But in that case, why did government refuse to release it under access to information, saying the information was a cabinet secret? Here was his answer today.
I think the public would expect that cabinet committees discuss our COVID readiness. I don't control the ATIP process, and nor should I. But and I mean, surely people would think that cabinet would discuss through committee and through cabinet itself the preparedness of the province for COVID-19.
Well, meanwhile, PC leader Ches Crosby is accusing the Premier of misleading the public when Fury said he used modeling to decide the timing of the election, and he questioned Fury's moral authority to govern.
Dragging in Dr. Rahman like he did was intended to give the public the impression that there was some kind of sophisticated workup, some kind of modeling going on the basis of which he called the election. We know now from both the Premier's own admission and from Dr. Rahman, when he said it would be very speculative, that there was no such modeling. There was at best a back-of-the-envelope attempt by Fury to sketch out 3 scenarios that he described.
From turnaround to the tech sector, a St. John's man has had to switch gears since the global demand for oil dropped during the pandemic.
Yeah, he was laid off from his job in Alberta in the oil patch last spring. Now he's thanking a local tech training program for helping him transition to a new and growing industry. Here now's Heather Gillis reports.
30-year-old Clark Oak was laid off from his turnaround job as an electronic technician working with heavy machinery in Alberta in May. He was one of nearly 24,000 Canadians to lose a job in Canada's energy sector in the second quarter of last year.
Obviously, things sort of exploded in the oil and gas sector.
A trend also seen in this province. At the end of 2019, there were nearly 9,000 people working in oil and gas. At the end of 2020, that number fell to about 5,300. But jobs in the tech sector, however, are expected to grow. The industry is estimated to exceed $1.6 billion, with approximately 165 companies and 4,000 employees, according to the provincial government. Demand is expected to exceed 2,000 new tech jobs over the next 3 years.
And technology has always been a passion of mine.
Oak has been on both sides of those statistics. He's retrained in tech with the help of Jan Mertlich at Get Coding. He's a software developer now with PolyUnity, a St. John's-based medical startup.
It's been absolutely crazy to go from, not knowing anything about software development originally, and then they've taken me through the whole process of transferring my, skill set.
His teacher, Mertlich, who has a computer science degree from MUN, started in-person coding classes in 2019.
Coding is a process of writing commands on your computer and making the computer show or do things in the way you want them to do.
He tailors training programs to his students' needs, assessing their education, experience, likes, and dislikes before helping them set training and job goals. Get Coding isn't a degree or diploma program. Mertlich says that doesn't matter as much in the tech industry. He says hands-on, practical experience does, since languages used to write code rapidly evolve. Meanwhile, Oak, Git Coding's first full-time student and the first student to get a job, says that approach worked for him.
There's so many really cool companies here doing so many really cool things, and they desperately need people.
We hope that Git Coding is going to be the centerpiece of the tech sector in Atlantic Canada.
Meanwhile, Mertlik, Git Coding CEO, says his second student is nearly finished the program. He says she'll be looking for jobs in the coming weeks. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, from one of the newest industries in the province to this one of the oldest.
We check in on the capelin and salmon stocks just after Ashley's weather forecast.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Well, Ashley, before we get to the weather, here's a sight we will not be seeing again until next winter.
Yeah, say goodbye to the loop at Bannerman Park. The city of St. John's closed for the season.
Yes, Ashley, the reason for the closure today is the weather. The city says it decided to close the loop now because of the rain and warming trend expected at the end of the week.
Yeah, we're going to see some significant rainfall, certainly for eastern portions of the island, specifically the Avalon. In fact, we're looking at maybe 30, even 50 millimeters of rain possible and warm temperatures. That's going to lead to some pretty significant melting as we head through the day on Friday. But very different story today, even though we had lots of sunshine. It was deceivingly cold out there, only reaching a high near -2 for the city of St. John's. And then we've got temperatures into the minus single digits for the rest of the province as well, or at least the rest of the island. Minus teens, the story for coastal Labrador. Now we still sitting there right now. We're going to expect those temperatures to dip a few more degrees as we head through the evening hours, but those gusty winds tonight, this is the sustained winds anywhere from 28 to 35 kilometers per hour with gusts upwards of 50 kilometers per hour. So that's leading to a little bit of a wind chill out there this evening. So if you're planning on heading out for a walk, you might want to bundle up, feeling more like -10 for St. John, same thing for Stephenville, and then feeling more like the -20s for parts of Labrador, certainly for Nain, -24. Not a whole lot happening as far as satellite and radar goes. We do have some flurries for the west coast and some of that cloud cover moving in, or did about an hour and a half ago, and some flurries moving through and across the Avalon. That's pretty much the story as we head through the overnight tonight, at least through the evening. Things should clear out overnight with partly to mostly cloudy skies and also some lingering flurries expected for the west coast. Not a whole lot happening for Labrador either, but some flurries and light snow will move in for Lab West as we head into the morning. Temperatures will be significantly warmer than where they were sitting last night for you in the Big Land. -18 overnight tonight for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Lab City at -15. And then for the island, temperatures pretty similar to what we saw last night, minus single digits, but low-lying areas as well as the northern peninsula dipping into the minus double digits, and those winds will finally ease for the majority of the island. Taking a look at the future tracker for tomorrow, starts quiet, increasing cloud as we head into the afternoon. Some light snow will move across Labrador into the afternoon, making its way towards the coast as we head into the evening hours, and then things start to get messy as we head into the late afternoon, early evening. Some rain or snow to start for most of us as we look at along the west coast and the south coast and then towards central, and then that will work its way towards eastern areas as we head into the early morning hours. At this point, it looks like it will be rain. Look at your temperatures for tomorrow. Back up 3 to 5 degrees, hence that changeover. But things will change back over to snow as we head into the evening hours, and things will get really wet as we head into Friday for eastern areas. But I will nail that down for you coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. A pretty good weather forecast, but we saw a very different kind of forecast today for capelin stocks. It's looking bleak. Federal fisheries officials are concerned about their status after what they've seen in the last 5 years. Capelin are described as a linchpin species because a healthy population helps other types of fish. Cod and turbot eat them, and without lots of capelin, those fish will eat more commercially viable crab and shrimp instead. DFO held a capelin research briefing in St. John's this morning and explained that the concerns come in part from scientists seeing fewer capelin larvae or eggs.
We've had low larval production for the last 7 years, actually, and late spawning, changes in feeding conditions. The prey that are available to capelin have changed during this time period, and all these things have resulted in low capelin productivity during the last 5 years and poor prospects for the next couple of years.
Well, another underwater species that's suffering, wild salmon stocks are severely declining on the south coast of Newfoundland and near extinction in 2 area rivers. That's according to the annual Atlantic Salmon Stock Assessment released by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans last week. Now, the aquaculture industry is responding to claims that it's to blame. Yesterday, the Atlantic Salmon Federation said fish farming is one of the reasons why the decline is happening. But the Newfoundland Aquaculture Industry Association disputed that today.
There is no data or research to conclude that aquaculture is a definitive contributing factor for salmon decline. What we do know is that industrialization, habitat loss, overfishing, interceptory fisheries from Greenland, St. Pierre, Miquelon, bycatch, for example, and angling and catch and release kills wild Atlantic salmon. So what I don't understand, or sometimes I have trouble understanding, is why people who kill wild Atlantic salmon for sport point the finger at aquaculture where there is no correlation in salmon decline.
I ended up falling through with nothing around me to hold on to other than the ice that was in front of me.
She was rescued from a snowmobile accident in Labrador in 2005.
Now we're checking back in with Jennifer Hamel in the next segment of This Is My Story. Well, tonight, as part of our special Here and Now series, This Is My Story, we're checking back in with Jennifer Hamel and her husband, Peter.
15 years ago, the couple went on one last snowmobile ride for the season with two other friends in Labrador when disaster struck. Their machine went through the ice.
Never had a grasp on the seriousness of the situation. We thought the ice was safe.
That I was thinking, like, Pete, get help. I need to get off this ice. My feet, at this point, I didn't have no boots. And my toes, I thought they were gone. So they moved really, really close to me, and he opened the door and he held out his hand and he said, move slow. And I was like, I'm getting off this ice.
So that was Jennifer shortly after being rescued, and here's what life is like for her today.
We decided to go on one last run on Skidoo before the summer. Sean and Greg were on one Skidoo. We were following behind. Once we crested the point, we saw them on the ice running and waving. I didn't think we were in that much trouble.
Hi, my name is Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Peter Hamel. In 2005, we were involved in a snowmobile accident.
And this is my story.
I don't know the bogs that well.
Peter Hermel, his wife Jennifer, and friends Sean Broomfield and Greg Finley are back together this afternoon, talking about their rescue from the icy waters of Lake Melville. They were coming across an area called Tarrington Basin, veered off the main trail, and headed for trouble. Both machines went through the ice.
When our Skidoo broke through, it only dropped a foot or two initially. It was still floating underwater. I thought it was sitting on the next layer of ice. And Jennifer got off Skidoo and she got mad, and she started stomping and jumping because she was so mad.
I actually stamped my foot on very thin ice and didn't realize what I was doing.
Yeah. And I told her not to worry. We're just going to have to get it out.
So we started walking to shore, and Pete was ahead of me. And as he was walking, me, stupid-like, instead of taking my own path, I followed directly behind him. And he was breaking through, and I was, at times, not able to touch anything with my feet. The further I was going, the further down I was going, and I ended up falling through with nothing around me to hold on to other than the ice that was in front of me. Nobody could get to me because there was very little for me to hold on to, and if anybody tried to get to me, they would have broken up the little bit of security that I had. I actually lost my boots because the current was pulling my boots off. Then Greg called out to me and he said, kick like you're swimming. That phrase right there is what saved my life. I started to kick and my 2 feet came up behind me, so I managed then to scoot both legs over onto this little bit of ice, and then I was on a pan. Sean, he was stuck, but he was on a harder pack of ice, so he was able to walk around and move around. He was okay, but he didn't want to try and get in, afraid he would be in the same situation that I was in. Greg got into shore, but he ended up losing his boots, so Pete was the only one who had boots on his feet. So he ended up walking with his snowsuit completely bogged down with water. He had to walk 6 kilometers to get help.
During the walk, it was just praying the whole time that Jennifer would hang on. And once I reached eyesight of the town, I began shouting for help, shouting for help, shouting for help. And that's when Tony heard me. He came along eventually on his Skidoo with the rope and picked me up and we went there. There was no way to get to her. He tried with the rope, nothing happened.
My feet started to get really, really cold, and Sean kept saying, move your feet, keep moving your toes, keep moving your toes. And I remember at one point saying, I'm going to lose my feet. And he said, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. I said, I can barely move my toes. So then it took another half hour or so, 40 minutes for the helicopter to actually come. Everyone started yelling at me, like, it's coming, you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay. And then they came closer to me, and they opened the side door of the helicopter, and one of the guys reached down and they grabbed my arms and kind because I couldn't really feel my feet all that much, I used my knee, and I actually hooked my knee on the runner of the helicopter, and they pulled me across the floor. I was so happy to have some kind of contact, and I just wrapped my arms around his leg the whole way to the hospital. The pilot actually came into the hospital to see us, and he had said, you know, you were very lucky, because as soon as my weight came off that pan, the pan actually tilted. So if I had tried to get myself into shore, this could have been a whole different story. That night, I didn't sleep. But that one night of not sleeping rolled over into months of not sleeping. I went through really bad post-traumatic stress, actually, and I hid it for a very long time before I let anybody know what was happening. And
yeah, I remember you saying every time you closed your eyes, you felt like you see yourself trapped under ice or something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly what would happen. The fear just overtook my life completely. Eventually, I did get in to see a counselor. It lasted for quite some time. I just kind of learned to put it behind me. When we had the accident, I was a waitress, and the doctor said, no, you'll never be able to do this again. And even now, if I'm not careful, if I'm not wearing the right footwear, my feet can still bother me, but it has gotten better over time. My career kind of took a dramatic turn to the better, actually. I ended up going from working in customer service to working as, started as a disability employment counselor with the Canadian Paraplegic Association. And I did that for about 8-9 years, and I loved it. Now, I'm actually working as a laborer here in Fort McMurray, working on the wetbacks and the hydrovacs, and I'm absolutely loving the outdoors and loving what I'm doing now. Pete and I have a really close relationship, and we kind of just got through it together. Never once did I ever feel that I couldn't go to him. We pushed ourselves to do better. And now we have a beautiful 4-year-old boy.
Jamie takes up a lot of our time. You know, he will reach the age where it won't be cool to spend time with mommy and daddy, so we're taking advantage of much time as we can.
Now, to look back on it, I just kind of shake my head at myself, like, what were you guys thinking? You know, when it comes to the spring of the year, I still feel a little worried, especially when I know, I got friends and family and they say they're going out on Skidoo, and the first thing I'll say to them is, be careful. Don't go on any ice. Don't do what we did. Okay, you ready? I did suffer some post-traumatic stress, and I tried to hide it. That, I think, made it worse for me. Yeah.
No, there's no shame in it.
There's no shame in it. There's no shame whatsoever.
Seeking help.
Reach out to as many people as possible. Reach out to your family, your doctors. Don't keep it inside as long as I did.
Great to hear they're doing so well. Yeah. And we are going to have the next segment of This Is My Story in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's when we'll check in with Haley Redmond, a woman with cerebral palsy who has dreams of becoming a Paralympic athlete. Ashley is back with a look at the long range. And Ashley, it sounds like some pretty messy weather is on the way later in the week.
Yeah, certainly for Friday. Things are going to start to get messy tomorrow, and then by Friday, another push of warm air will move in, and we're looking at some significant rainfall for eastern areas. So let's time that out as far as the future tracker goes. We'll take, you can see by Friday morning, most of eastern Newfoundland, as well as, well, pretty much Gander. You're going to be on that rain-snow line, but most of eastern Newfoundland will be into that rain, which will be heavy at times as we head into the afternoon. Anything essentially west of Gander should fall as snow for Friday, which will again be heavy at times through central, and then that will make its way towards the Burin and the Bonavista Peninsula overnight, pretty much Friday, and then it will end as snow for the Avalon as well into Saturday morning. As far as Saturday goes, things will be quiet, which will be nice, and then some sun should actually peek out, and that'll be the start to some pretty quiet weather and some warmer weather as well as we head into next week. So taking a look at Friday's forecast, 5-6 degrees for eastern areas. The other thing to note with this are going to be some strong winds, upwards of about 80 kilometers per hour, certainly possible in those exposed areas. So with that heavy rainfall, make sure that the snow grates are actually, or the grates are free of snow, just so that, because we're going to see some rapid melting, so that's a good indication as to why to clear those, and then so we don't see so much flooding potentially. And as far as the western portion of the island goes, you can see you're going to stay below zero, so we're going to continue to see that flurry activity and or light snow, and then most of Labrador will be into the minus teens. Now, as far as amounts go, 30 to 50 millimeters for the majority of eastern Newfoundland. Could pick up anywhere from 5 to 15 centimeters of snow. More snow and less rain the further west you go. So in the yellow there, we're looking at about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain and possibly 10 to 20 centimeters. Have to refine this forecast more than likely, but this is a good start. And then as you head towards the west coast, significantly less, trace to 5 centimeters of snow, and same thing for that rain. Now, as far as Saturday goes, temperatures will be a little bit below zero, -2, -3, and we actually should see some clearing skies as we head into next week, though. That's when things are really going to warm up. So by Sunday, already above zero. Monday looks like 7-degree temperatures. We could even reach the double digits as we head through the beginning of the week. So certainly good news as far as getting rid of the rest of the snow, which doesn't melt on Thursday or Friday. For central Newfoundland, you're looking at a similar warm-up by Monday, looking at about 9 degrees. And then for western Newfoundland, similar forecasts and flurries possible on Sunday, but also some sunshine. And then as we head up through Labrador, we're looking at temperatures, again, a similar warm-up. Sunday and Monday, sunshine, and then those mild temperatures, 2 to 8 degrees by the time Monday rolls around. For western Labrador, looking at above zero temperatures as well, but not nearly as warm. Still going to feel nice, though, with that sunshine on Monday hovering around the 2-degree mark. Wanted to share this photo of low tide at Meadows Beach. Thank you to Laura for sharing that photo with us. And if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
The suspect in yesterday's deadly shootings in Georgia has been charged with murder and assault. Most of the victims were women, 6 of Asian descent. Police are still investigating whether this was a hate crime. Authorities say the suspect, currently in custody, claims his actions were not motivated by race.
Able to interview him with the Atlanta Police Department and FBI. He made indicators that he has some issues, potentially sexual addiction, and may have frequented some of these places in the past.
The attacks that unfolded across 3 different massage parlors in the Atlanta area left 8 people dead. A 21-year-old man from Woodstock, Georgia, has taken responsibility for the shootings.
This week, a former U.S. diplomat helped get a 4-year-old Canadian girl out of a detention camp in Syria. Now we're learning there are dozens more like her. She was living with her mother in a camp for families of ISIS fighters. The mother says she lost her brother to gun violence as a teen. Vulnerable, she was recruited by ISIS. When her husband took her to Syria, she says she regretted it almost immediately. There are at least 23 more Canadian children in that camp, and others like it. The CBC's Margaret Evans has been in northeastern Syria and has more on the story.
On the tattered edges of a region torn by conflict, the tattered edges of a detention camp for the families of ISIS militants, including Canadian women and their children. News here that one of those mothers has managed to send her daughter to freedom in Canada is still making the rounds, leaving in its wake some complicated emotions.
I'm really happy. I'm really happy that she made it.
This Western Canadian mother says she couldn't make the same decision. We've altered her voice at her request.
I don't think I can bear it, without my children,
Oh, the Canadians we met asked for anonymity. They know not everyone in Canada views their situation with sympathy, but they also feel abandoned by their government. One mother, 25 now and 19 when she left Canada, says she couldn't survive here without her children.
I'm like, the only reason here I'm still coping and still going on with my day every day is because of them.
We spoke to the mother of the little girl now back in Canada. She didn't want to speak to us on camera because she wants to protect the identity of her daughter, but she did tell us just how difficult it was to make that decision. She also said some of the other Canadian mothers here in the detention camp are worried that if they do manage to get their children out, the Canadian government will forget the mothers left behind. Margaret Evans, CBC News, northeastern Syria.
Social workers often care for people in their most vulnerable moments.
In Nova Scotia, the regulator overseeing the profession has been dealing with a growing number of complaints, including those related to inappropriate relationships. In the last 4 months alone, 2 social workers have had their registrations revoked.
A complainant in one of those cases wants to share their story. It's a warning about the importance of professional boundaries and a call for a better complaints process. Investigative reporter Elizabeth McMillan has that story from Halifax.
Taryn had hoped to find a safe space to heal from complex PTSD. A healthcare professional recommended social worker Eileen Carey. The client, whose identity is protected by a publication ban, says counseling sessions started off normally, but week by week things changed. Instead of healing breakthroughs, professional boundaries blurred. They texted frequently and socialized. At one point, Taryn disclosed they had romantic feelings for their counselor, but treatment continued.
It can be a very difficult time, a very impactful and distressing experience as a client, but there are specific strategies that social workers are well trained in to implement.
That did not happen. The boundaries further evaporated. The client remembers spending more time together. Carrie also introduced her client to a practice called Access Consciousness. It was founded by an American entrepreneur in the 90s and promises tools to change lives.
There's no right or wrong. Judgment is a limitation. And there's a lot of emphasis on becoming a humanoid, which involves transcending our humanness. It brought us incredibly close together.
Outside of therapy appointments, Carrie invited her client to her home. They took turns lying on a massage table. They practiced techniques of access consciousness, light touches that are meant to release energy. Alex Stratford is the executive director of the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers.
It's not an acceptable practice because it's not evidence-based. It doesn't have the research behind it to demonstrate that it would be effective. And two, it has significant issues with how it sets up the relationship between the client and the practitioner in terms of those professional boundaries.
4 years after meeting Carrie, the former client was struggling with thoughts of suicide and the toll it was all taking on their marriage. They felt this distress was the result of therapy.
I've experienced a lot of harm in my life. I have never experienced a kind of harm that is this insidious.
In December, the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers revoked Carrie's registration permanently. She declined an interview with CBC News. The college found she had failed to maintain proper boundaries. Her actions amounted to professional misconduct and a breach of standards of practice and of ethics.
It comes back to trust. We want Nova Scotians to trust the professionals that are caring for them.
But the client says after engaging in the disciplinary process for 2 years, the wording of the final decision fell short and failed to reflect their experience.
I feel unheard. I feel disrespected.
Taryn wants the regulator to consider doing more to support people who come forward, including hiring a person to help complainants navigate the disciplinary process and avoid any further traumatization. Elizabeth McMillan, CBC News, Halifax.
Welcome back. Well, as we told you on Monday, the East Coast Music Hour is taking a pandemic perspective this month.
They're recording the series The Story and Song from a safe distance by getting musicians to share their music from home.
Yes, Morgan Toney of Nova Scotia first stepped into the spotlight on Thanksgiving weekend when he joined Ashley McIsaac during an online music festival.
The theme he's exploring, the unknown. Have a look.
Hi, my name is Morgan Toney, and I'm from Wamacook First Nation. And this is my song about the unknown, Alasunamakan. And in the chorus, you hear Niskam Nudai, Alasunamakan. And in Mi'kmaq, that translates to, Lord, I need to pray. This song is about acceptance of the unknown.
Niskam Nudai. Me strength to face the things unknown. For only you can see what lies ahead of me tomorrow. I will listen in the wind as I walk through the land, 'cause I know your words speak to greater plan. This can do die. I'll suit them all.
Even though he's not Irish, fiddle music seems like an appropriate way to end the St. Patrick's Day edition of Here and Now.
Yes, yes, tapping your toes to that one for sure. Again, that was Mi'kmaq artist Morgan Toney, and later in the week we'll have a performance from our own Eastern Owl. That's coming up on Friday. Well, that's it for us. Good night, everyone.
Good night.